Innovation 360 degrees, and of course, the list of all the services we provide. And beyond that is our guest this evening, Nona Ullman. Nona, how are you?
I'm great. So happy to be here, David.
You know what? You got to tell us where you are in the world.
I live currently in Chappaqua, New York. It's about 30 miles north of New York City, but have come here by way of a Chicagoland area where I grew up in a small town called Barrington, Illinois.
Barrington, Illinois. And how did you get to the great state of New York, my home state?
I came out here for college. I went to Cornell University to the School of Industrial and Labor Relations. My dad was a labor lawyer. My mom was a teacher, and came out here and then thought, let me try New York City for a couple of years before I moved back to Chicago, and then just met my husband and never left.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Welcome to my home state, the great state of New York.
And it is.
Here, you can say this for those who are not familiar with New York. What's upstate New York?
I think upstate New York starts with Poughkeepsie and north of there.
Okay. Is Buffalo upstate New York?
It is.
No, it's not.
What do you think is Canada?
It's Western New York. Buffalo is Western New York. Okay. Here's another one for you. Do you live on Long Island or in Long Island?
On Long Island. It's so funny. I used to think 3 Mile Island before I moved out here was Long Island, and then I quickly learned that was not the case.
That's right. Okay, let me do a formal introduction here. Nona Ullman, founder, CEO, LessonLoop, is a seasoned educator, district administrator, and management consultant dedicated to transforming teaching and learning through data-driven solutions. With over 30 years experience working with over 50 educational agencies across 22 states, Ms. Ullman brings unmatched expertise in data analytics, student voice, and professional development. Ms. Ullman founded LessonLoop in 2020 to help teachers unlock the power of student voice to enhance engagement and learning. LessonLoop's innovative platform uses anonymous student feedback and AI-enhanced strategies to provide teachers with actionable insights and professional development tailored to their unique classroom needs. How in the world did you get involved with this? And I understand that you didn't study education in college. So how did you make the jump from all the things that you've done in life to the business of education?
Well, I was working at Accenture, doing strategic consulting for Fortune 500 companies and change management consulting. And I felt like I was just making rich companies richer. As I mentioned, my mother was a teacher. My dad was a school district attorney. And it was right when charter schools came out. And I thought, how can I apply my management consulting skills to the education world? And so I went to grad school. And when I came out, I started working at New Visions for Public Schools, which is still around. And we did I've worked now on at least 20 projects for New York City public schools. And at that time, we were developing school report cards for the New York City public schools. And I got hooked. I just love the work that I've been doing. And I've continued to do that for over 30 years.
And you have a background in IT as well.
I do. I've spent from the very beginning, my initial job at Accenture was to develop training to implement large-scale information systems. Originally, we worked for Hershey Chocolate, putting in a customer service system. And then at KPMG, continued with back office HR and finance and payroll systems, working with SAP and Oracle and PeopleSoft, and then moved into the data warehousing arena, trying to aggregate and analyze root causes of how to improve student engagement even back then.
Mm-hmm. And how do you use your IT with the work you do now?
Well, when I started my own consulting firm, my first big project was working with Greenwich Public Schools, and we implemented a 5-year digital learning environment where we worked with 9,000 students and 900 staff, and we gave every person a device. And then my job was project management and program evaluation. So we trained people on how to use the device and the apps, and this was back in 1993. So it was right when, it was back in 2013. So this is right when the iPads were still kind of in early generations. And so we were creating a one-to-one environment, and we came up with very specific educational goals. And our job was to get students using technology. And what I learned from that experience and why I created LessonLoop was that we could use technology and active classrooms to more successfully engage students.
And you run 2 other companies, or at least you're involved with 2 other companies. There is Improve and Bus Right. Tell us what those companies are.
So Improve is a management consulting company. That is the remains of when I worked at KPMG, their educational consulting practice. KPMG sold off their practice to KPMG Consulting. It rebranded to Bearing Point and went bankrupt. So I've continued to work with state education agencies, New York City public schools. My most recent project was working with the Rhode Island Department of Education, creating educational guidance for all of their local education agencies on charter schools and how to use AI in education. So that's an example. And for New York City public schools, we help them develop a generative AI product to support the rollout of illustrative math. So that's Improve. And then Busright, I'm just an advisor to that company. One of my daughter's best friends, we have 3 daughters from high school, Keith Corso, who's the founder and CEO of Busright. We helped him get started with his company, and now they're on a Series B round. So it's basically Uber for buses, and they provide school districts very quick and easy routing on how to have the most efficient routes. And then it communicates in real time to parents when the bus is arriving.
Amazing. Of course, you know that I've been a school administrator, and buses, that's a big job and not necessarily the easiest job, particularly when it comes to scheduling and arrival on time and such. Oh, impressive. Very impressive. And I suppose your IT skills are deeply involved in that effort.
I'm more on the finance and strategy side. I'm not a programmer. I'm someone that can understand how to pull together the requirements of what the system should do and the technology folks and come up with a product roadmap for how to meet those customer needs.
Well, very exciting. You and I are going to have a great time talking today. We have 5 topics. Students are not engaged and it matters. Student voice and agency, key drivers of engagement. We can systematically measure and improve student engagement in real time with student surveys equal to or greater than just the right strategy at just the right time. And using AI to plan can save time, boosting engagement in every lesson. So where would you like to start?
Well, let's start with the fact that students are not engaged in their learning. As I mentioned, I have 3 daughters. One of them had a friend taking Spanish during COVID, and they were on the Zoom and they were asked to complete a worksheet. And instead of actually speaking Spanish, they were just filling out the worksheet, which they probably could have done independently. And I asked the student, why didn't you say anything? And she's like, well, I didn't want to offend the teacher, and I also thought it might impact my grade. And so she didn't say anything. But if she had had a safe way to communicate to her teacher that she would have preferred speaking, a more active applied learning, she would have had a better learning experience than probably other students would have too. And she's not alone. In fact, research shows that 86% of students are disengaged in their learning for very fixable reasons. And it's because it's not active enough. It may not be at the right level of challenge. They don't feel they're part of a community. And so what we found also is that the kids that are most engaged learn an average of 22% more in their content area. So engagement matters. What we came up with the idea is that you can actually, and we found this is true, you can measure engagement in real time, and it's actually predictive of academic outcomes. So what LessonLoop is a quick and easy way to measure student engagement by simply asking students with a student survey that's issued like an exit ticket at the end of a class lesson. And then we take the lowest scoring area, we call it an opportunity area, and we come up with a recommendation based on a knowledge base of one instructional strategy they can use to improve student engagement in the class lesson. And overall,
does all this happen in real time?
Yes.
I can't picture it. All right, so what is it that the students, or how is it that you're collecting data or collecting information from students during a class lesson?
It's a great question. So the teacher picks a survey ahead of time and they get a link, like a Google form link. Many teachers are collecting data on their own Google Forms now. And it's like they would issue any kind of assessment. You just have you paste the URL link to the survey in your learning management system, or you write a code on the board, and they can use, like many districts have something called Clever or ClassLink. It allows for single sign-on into an application. And so you just click on the link and it takes them to a quick 5-minute survey. So many teachers are already doing content assessments at the end of a class lesson. We suggest they just add these questions to the end of that content assessment. And then the results are available immediately in real time. So the teacher can, if they wanted, project the results and students could see, everyone could see where they're engaged or not. It's up to the teacher what lesson they survey. And then we received a grant. We won this tools competition to incorporate AI into our platform. And that allows us to take this knowledge base of strategies that we've developed with Teachers College at Columbia University and other renowned educators. And we basically have tagged all of the strategies to the different questions. And then that recommendation is served up in real time. So they get.
So how are students responding to the survey, the questionnaire? Are they using their telephones?
It's you can use telephone, you can use a laptop. You need to have some device right now because they're anonymous student surveys. So students have told us that they would only feel comfortable providing candid feedback with anonymous data. So many teachers have asked us, can we have paper copies? You potentially could if you just had kids make X's on the answers, but the safest way to ensure anonymity is through a digital survey.
I'd like to go backward if I may. Students are not engaged and it matters. I'll say K-12 or maybe even K-9, K-8 or K-8 or K-9 is different than higher education, let's say. And even in high school, we expect students to be more responsible for their own learning. And especially if you're going to get into higher education, you're expected to be responsible for your own learning. In other words, a teacher shouldn't need to do a song and dance to get kids engaged. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, when we say engagement, we define that as active, joyful, rigorous learning, where students ideally are taking ownership of their learning. And that's not really happening in high school. So we're not saying that teachers have to entertain students. So that's an excellent question. That's not what we're about. We're about creating what learning science says are more effective learning experiences. And more effective learning experiences where kids learn more are those that are active. You're not passively listening to a lecture. You're actively engaged in your learning. You are working with other students. It's those 21st century skills of collaboration. Maybe there's a fine arts component where you bring in creativity and you can learn better through writing something down or drawing something. But the key is more effective pedagogy, and where students are taking ownership of their learning. That is when you learn more. So it's not about entertaining students.
Could you give us a quick rundown of effective pedagogy that would engage students?
So one of them, for example, is the 4 corners strategy. So we actually have an example where you could take a plot. The content standard would be plot or reading comprehension, and you could look at, for example, Katniss's character and the extent to which you agree that she was a strong woman and that she was developing her character along the way. And each corner, if you strongly agree with that, would be one corner. If you somewhat agree, we'd go to a different corner of the room, and then so on. So you'd have 4 corners, and then students would meet in those corners. So you're active, you're moving around, and you're discussing plot in a more physically active conversational way.
All right. Another example of effective pedagogy that is effectively engages students.
So let's take math. So I don't know if you're familiar with the website Desmos, but research has shown that you can learn math if you can visualize it and you can apply it to a real world experience. So there's a video called Act 1, and sometimes we recommended the strategy for linear equations where you start out with 30 cents on the meter, and for every mile you go, you get another 50 cents. And you can structure it so that students work in small groups and play the video one part at a time and work through the equation.
Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. And I am so impressed that as someone who did not study education, spend years and years in the classroom and in the books studying education, that you're so well versed in pedagogy and effective teaching. All right, let's go to our next bullet. No, you decide. We have student voice and agency, key drivers of engagement.
Yeah, so just one point to address your former point is we have almost everyone that works at LessonLoop are teachers, and I personally have done a lot of adult professional learning and then also teaching through enrichment programs. So just wanted to mention that. In terms of student empowerment and agency, people move in the direction of the questions that you ask. And so one of the ways that we develop students' voice and choice and sense of feeling their voice is heard and validated is by asking these questions, because then you start to think about those questions and you develop metacognitive skills about your learning. So we say, was this lesson joyful for you? Were you actively participating or working with other students in this lesson? Was this lesson at your just right level? How difficult was it? But once students start asking them those questions, then they start thinking, well, maybe if it's too difficult, I should ask for help. Or, maybe I should be actively learning. But we want students to self-advocate and realize that they should have voice and choice in their learning.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's a question. With such emphasis on standardized tests, what effect does this approach have on student performance on standardized tests?
So research does show that the kids that are in the top quartile of engagement learn 22% more on standardized tests. So we believe that engagement, and the research proves this, is a precursor to academic success. And the research also shows that students are in the best position to know whether or not they're engaged. So teachers can't always tell if students are engaged, which is why we have them do these student voice surveys. Sometimes teachers feel students are engaged if they're sitting there quietly listening. And some of those students may be engaged, but some of them may be thinking about what they had for lunch earlier today or what they're going to do after school. So the more that you can get kids up and active and then ask them if they were engaged, then you'll know.
Wow. Very, very interesting. All right, where should we go next? The next bullet is we can systematically measure and improve student engagement in real time.
Yeah, so right now, teachers are feeling very overwhelmed. There's a lot of behavior problems in the classroom. There are probably more new teachers in our classrooms than we've ever had before. And so the key is, one, you want to build relationships with those students. That's one of the most important parts of engagement, is creating an environment where students feel comfortable participating. And I don't know if if you have kids or your kids ever came home and said, the first thing they say to me after the first day of school is, I like my teacher. I think that teacher likes me. That's one of the most, and I have a friend in the class, right? So we start with building relationships, and we have a get to know my students survey. It's brand new, and we just started seeing the results actually today. And they are both heartwarming and heartbreaking. And the goal here is to build relationships at scale. We have an 11 question survey that asks students questions about, when has a teacher made you feel welcome? When has a teacher been very helpful to you? How would you like to be treated by your teachers and other students? And some of the answers to these questions might surprise you. Like when we ask, what would you want your teacher to know about you? When we were designing the survey, I thought they would say, well, my interests or my hobbies, my favorite artists. But it was actually, I want them to know I want to be treated with kindness and respect. And those are the values: kindness, patience, respect, and trust are what we're seeing are the most important values to students interacting with themselves and with teachers. When we ask them, what characteristics do other students like the most about you? The top characteristic is actually funny. They perceive themselves as funny.
Or they want to be known as funny among their classmates.
Yes.
Go ahead, please continue. This is very interesting and enlightening.
It's so interesting. And so the goal is for teachers, when you teach 120 kids in 6 sections, it's hard to get to know them all, right? But this provides a class profile, and you can start getting very quickly with literally, it's like a 5-minute survey. You can get a sense of the stories of these kids and the collective stories. And so it's about, when you said systematically gathering data, you can build relationships at scale and help teachers gather information that will help them connect to the students in their class in a way that's quick and easy. And one of your prior podcasts, they said it's a small investment for a large return. This is like a 5 or 10 minute investment. And then you can use this data for the rest of the semester, not only to get to know them, but then personalize the lessons to the needs of their students. Because we also ask, what would you like to do as a career? And we're seeing business, healthcare, technology are some of the top careers. What problems would you like to solve in your community? And those have ranged, they've said things like fighting, smoking, we have no money. Like there's a lot of things. And then some kids are like, well, I have no problem. So there's a whole range of what students are telling their teachers, but it immediately creates this connection to the students.
Nona, now I'm hearing this as separate from the other survey, real-time survey that you recommend. Is this one anonymous as well?
It is.
Okay. So then it creates a class profile instead of an individual student profile.
That's exactly it.
Okay. And then does the information go back directly to the teacher, or does it go
Yeah.
to a middle person who interprets it and then ensures anonymity and delivers it to the teacher?
The key is to provide instant data, instant important data. So we ask very specific questions that have been tested extensively and based in research, and we instantly provide the data. And not only that, so you get instant insights, it's very quick to issue, but then you get real-time recommendations on how to improve opportunity areas or how to better connect to your students. We have a lot of community building strategies around community building for students. So a culture tree, or different ways for students to interact with each other in a very appreciative way to build on each other's strengths. So there's a number of strategies in there around team building and culture building.
Now, is there a concern, or what do you do to protect data? In other words, I'm thinking of, what is it, 23andMe? Yeah, 23andMe going out of business, and people have donated or have given all of their personal data to 23andMe, and now there's a question of what's going to happen to those data now that they're disappearing. So how do you protect students' data, and who owns that data, and where do the data go after the semester is ended?
Yeah, excellent question. We don't collect any personally identifiable student information other than if districts want a single sign-on capability, that student is assigned a Clever or ClassLink unique ID. And then we don't bring that ID back into our system. We never attach whatever the Clever or ClassLink ID is into our data. So we don't collect student names, student birthdays. We collect, for equity reasons, we collect gender, and then for grades, we're grades 3 to 12, but for grades 6 and up, we look at gender, race, ethnicity.
And where are the data housed then? Are they housed in someone's cloud or
Amazon? We're an Amazon. That's the cloud that we use, and it's all very securely kept. We passed through the Project Unicorn data privacy, taken their pledge. We've actually been certified by New York City through the IRMA process, and we've also negotiated our data privacy and security contract with New York City, and it's compliant with New York State's privacy regulations, which are some of the strictest in the nation. So we are very conscious and protective of not only student data, but also teacher data. We don't share any teacher data with principals. It's all confidential to teachers.
Okay. Very, very excellent. Those are good. Oh, I'm really enthused and excited about this. All right. With student surveys equal to or greater than just the right strategy at just the right time, could you expound upon that?
So we have 3 types of surveys. The first one is that we recommend teachers start with is the Get to Know My Student survey to start building those relationships. And then we have our benchmark student engagement survey. It's 15 questions in 9 categories aligned with learning science. So there's the classroom environment there's 3 main areas, and that looks at social, emotional, and cognitive. So do students feel comfortable participating? Is it joyful? Is it at a rigorous active level? And then we have the student mindset area, and that's, do students have some kind of agency in the classroom? Are they able to self-regulate and not interrupt the teacher, get their work done? Are there any mitigating factors that might be impacting their ability to engage in the class, like stress levels? And then the third area is personalized pedagogy. So we want to make sure that all students have access to class materials. If you have an exceptionality, do you have larger typeface? Is it available? Are there captions available? Is the lesson the right pace for you? Are there a variety of activities being used? And then is technology being used to help students in their learning? So those are kind of the 9 categories. And then what we do is if you score low in any one of those categories, and every category has anywhere from like 7 to 12 questions, then we provide a evidence-based instructional strategy to help you improve in that question. So we can help you create a more exciting lesson, and it's all based on the content area that you're teaching. Now, the way that we've integrated AI into our platform is that once you get a strategy based on your student survey data, you then can say, well, I'm teaching a linear equations topic in my next class lesson, and the system will apply that strategy to your next content topic and give you an engaging activity for whatever duration you want, 5 minutes to 20 minutes, to make that next lesson more engaging for your students. So it works with any content area, any subject, any standard. It's just a way to kind of turbocharge your next lesson. And again, it's like instantaneous. You say, here's my next topic. It's already recommended the strategy, and it will generate an engaging activity for you.
Well, Nona, you mentioned it, so let's go further into it. Special needs students. How do you accommodate special needs students?
So there, as you know, there's a variety of exceptionalities. So every student is unique. And in this situation, we are building out additional exceptionalities into our platform. So right now we actually were just awarded Digital Promises, Prioritizing Racial Equity in AI Design. And as part of that, we looked at equity for all students. And so right now we have a prompt built in that ask the activity to make sure that it is accessible for all different types of students. And so right now we're using Sonnet 3.5, and it's pretty good in that it will say, make sure that this is physically accessible. If you have a student that is impaired physically, make sure that you have accommodated for that, and that there is a way for them to participate and have different forms of the materials available. But as we get better, we actually have someone we work with, Dr. Barbara Hasty, who is a supervisor at the Ulster County BOCES and specializes in special education. She is helping us develop our prompting around a more extensive variety of exceptionalities.
There's a lot of talk these days about neurodiversity. How is that reflected in your work?
It's an excellent question. So we've been in Rhode Island, we've been working with a number, across the entire state. There's a lot of questions about how to use technology properly to support, let's say, a student with dyslexia. So technology has some of the, especially AI, some research has shown that is most effective for students who are furthest behind or have more exceptionalities that they need to bridge in order to access grade level content. So it can summarize a 40-page dense PDF, very quickly into key findings, or it can level up a text for you. So the question is, you want to use it to supplement your education, not supplant. And so you have both sides. You have students with dyslexia, and a father has said, I don't think he would have read this otherwise. So I want him to have the summary, but then I'm afraid he won't even try and read it. So it's going to be a fine balance of how to use the technology. But I do think that it definitely will help students who are neurodivergent and have exceptionalities probably the most. They have a lot to benefit from the use of technology in education.
Well, ma'am, we have just a minute remaining and one more bullet. So let's see if we can discuss this bullet. Using AI to plan can save time, boosting engagement in every lesson.
Yeah, so that's where the AI generator comes in. And there are just like you have key content or priority content standards, there really are priority pedagogical practices that can help students learn the material faster and more effectively if you use them. And so our goal is to serve those up to teachers as quickly as possible, and then use the AI to apply that strategy to their next class lesson.
Wow, we've covered a lot of things very quickly, and clearly, obviously, you've got more to say. So given what we've covered, what would be a takeaway you would like people to have from all the topics that you've discussed?
I think the takeaway would be that student engagement matters, and that we can actually, for the first time, measure it in real time and also improve it with evidence-based pedagogical practices. And I would recommend that you start tomorrow. We're offering a free trial of LessonLoop right now. So if you know of a district or a teacher that is interested in trying it out, give us a call.
Okay. And what do you want people to do with this besides call you?
You can email us, or you can go to our website and fill out our contact form. You see our website right there is www.lessonloop.org. You can also direct message me on LinkedIn or Facebook, or email me, and we would be very excited to share our platform with you.
Well, Nona, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for being our guest this evening. Nona Ullman is founder, CEO of LessonLoop, and she is a seasoned educator who has done a zillion things in the short time she's been on this earth. Thank you for being our guest, and thank you to all of our guests, our audience, and we look forward to the next time that we can get together.
Thank you so much for having me, David. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure.